You clicked this because you've had a planning application stuck for months, maybe even years, and you're starting to suspect the tree officer has got it in for you. I guess that's right. Here's the truth. Most tree officers don't want to block development, but the system forces them into that role of, well, frankly, being the villain. In this episode of Ask the Arb, I'll show you what's really happening inside the local authorities and why your frustration probably isn't aimed at the person you think it is. So folks, in this episode of the Ask the Arb podcast, we're going to be looking at why tree officers are being turned into scapegoats. And that's where the real bottleneck is in your application. But before that, we have got our feature for you. So the first one we're going to today is this one. Hi folks, it's time for You Couldn't Plan It, the feature where me and my team have scoured the internet for stupid, silly and downright infuriating planning related facts. Let's go. Absolutely. So even with the terrible intonation, we are going to go to this article here, which is about a businessman waging war. So let's have a look at this. If I can pull up the right thing here on the internet. This makes absolutely fantastic listening, doesn't it? As I click around like a madman in the background trying to put this into my browser where I thought I'd already put it. So let's have a look. This article, I'm afraid it's a Daily Mail article, but the headline of this one is Businessman Wages 3-year War with Neighbours Over Monster Mansion That Ruined the Cul-de-sac After Building It Without Planning Permission. This, I find this staggering that people will build anything without planning permission. I mean, how on earth do they think that this is going to gonna end up? But anyway, we'll probably stick a link to this in the video description if you're watching this on YouTube. But basically it says, in true Daily Mail headline style, a Porsche driving businessman, I'm not sure how that's relevant, who bulldozed a modest home and replaced it with a hulking monster mansion has been ordered to tear it down as furious neighbours branded it an eyesore that has ruined the cul-de-sac. It says a mattress mogul, I'm not going to read his name out, spent £235,000 to purchase a humble property in Dewsbury, West Yorkshire, and he got this bad boy back in 2021. However, instead of sticking to planning approval for a small extension, he then demolished the house entirely. In its place emerged a sprawling gable-fronted replacement that dwarfs over other properties in the quiet suburban street. The vast building, stretching 16 metres in length, now looms over the modest bungalows and traditional family homes. And the article goes on and there's pictures in there. So, what I would say, looking at this terrible illegal house, is it looks perfectly in keeping, and it doesn't seem to be much of an issue at all, really. I'm not sure what all the fuss is about, but there we go. So what do we take away from this one, guys? We take away from this that you need to make sure if you do get planning consent, you stick to it. One resident who was asked not to be named said it's huge and totally out of keeping with the rest of the street. I mean, this didn't appear overnight, did it? You know, there must have been some development taking place. You would have thought the local authority would have enforced this a little bit quicker. One of the other neighbours goes on to say, planning rules are here for a reason. Maybe he thought he could just apply for retrospective consent, but that's when you stick up a fence that's a bit too tall, not when you build an entire house. So he first applied for retrospective planning permission in 2023, but Kirklees Council refused, saying the mansion failed to fit in with the character of it. I keep saying mansion. This is really not a mansion. It's a 4-bedroom detached house. An appeal last year was dismissed, with the planning inspector, Caroline, ruling the new home was significantly larger than the original. This sounds like a massive waste of everybody's time and energy, doesn't it? And there are some photos in here of what was going on during the work. So yeah, we'll put a link in the description. Go away and have a look at that one. So back to the episode. So are tree officers secretly killing development? Well, let's have a look at this. First, I think it would be good to get an understanding of what the tree officer's role actually is. Now, in my book, which if you're listening, you can't see it, but if you're on YouTube, I'm holding it up and waving it in front of the camera. There's actually a section in here which talks about, here we are, that talks about the roles of various different people within the planning process. So there's some information in here. I talk about the planning officer, the architect, the arboricultural consultant, the structural engineer, and then we get to the tree officer. And I just thought it'd be worth just having a look at this and just refreshing us what the tree officer's actual role is. So generally speaking, they are employed by the local planning authority, and their role isn't just planning related. They actually are the voice of reason, the voice of authority within the local planning authority for all tree related issues. So this could be planting of new woodland, advising local conservation groups, helping out other colleagues with roadside trees, managing the roadside trees within the borough, and all that kind of good stuff. But one of their bullet points is advising on planning applications to account of tree protection laws, advising on the effect developments might have on trees in an area and how best to include them in planned projects, managing trees in parks, open areas and the side of roads, organising tree surveys and recording tree locations, answering inquiries from the public and planning tree planting schemes, supervising tree care and tree planting contracts by site visits and overseeing contractors' work, and giving demonstrations, talks and training. And, at the end of the day, the tree officer is key to success of your project at the planning stage, and your consultant must demonstrate to the satisfaction of the tree officer that no retained trees are going to be damaged through the construction phase and beyond. The problem is with arboriculture is that it is very subjective. There are very few absolutes when it comes to trees, and it's a critical role. The tree officer is normally directly employed by the local planning authority, but some local authorities will have an external consultancy, people like us, that they go to and ask for advice if they haven't got somebody in position. How is the tree officer consulted? Well, the way these things generally work is that when you submit your planning application, if there are trees on or adjacent to the red line boundary, the planning officer should pick up on that, and he'll check to see you've got a tree report in place. If you haven't got a tree report in place, then they're going to come back to you and they're going to ask for that. Once they have got that, it will be passed to the tree officer as the consultee, and he will have a look at that and make sure everything is all in order and feedback on your application. The likely outcome of all of this will depend on the quality of the report that you've submitted. So if you've done everything that you need to do to ensure that trees aren't harmed through development, and that is in a nice, robust, defensible argument within your report to put in front of the tree officer, then you shouldn't have any problems. People get the best outcomes in planning when they make the lives of the consultees as easy as possible. You don't want to get in a situation where you're having backwards and forwards dialogue with the local planning authority, because trust me, that can drag on for months and sometimes years. What you really want to be doing is making sure that you're putting a robust, defensible project and argument in front of the consultee right at planning stage, and then they will be satisfied, and hopefully the likely outcome from that will be essentially a decision notice which has a condition on it to make sure the trees are protected through the development phase and beyond, and you're good to go. So that's that. So tree officers aren't secretly killing development. They're there to help you. You just need to make sure you put the right information in front of them. So that's the fire alarm test going off in the background there, and we're probably not going to be able to edit that out, so that's fun. Right, so our next feature is this. You've got the questions, the planning system's a nightmare. We have got the answers. Welcome to the Planning Permission Panic Line. So in this week's episode, let me have a look and see how many questions we've got in. I did actually, in my weekly newsletter, which I still haven't actually sorted a link out to, but we must. Oh, did I? I might have sorted a link out to it actually. If I have, it will be in the description. We'll make sure it's in there, so you can sign up to my weekly newsletter that goes out to our list. And we did invite questions in. I've got 1 or 2 fresh ones, but I need to vet those before I do those live on air. So let's go back to our historic list here and see what we've got. Try and find something tree related. Let me see, what have we got here? We've got one here from Rob in Lancaster, who says, if we're planting new trees as part of landscaping, will that count towards BNG? Generally yes, it will, Rob. That's more of an ecology matter than an arboricultural matter, but basically for the trees to be included within the metric, you need to make sure that they're outside of the residential curtilage. So it depends on the specifics of your project, and your ecology consultant should be able to help you with that. But yes, essentially they should do. Yeah. Let me have a look to see what other ones we've got on here that are tree related. There's lots of that ones. Here we go. We've got one from Scott here in Ipswich, and Scott says, do we need an arboricultural method statement even if we're not felling any trees? Yes. An arboricultural method statement is basically a document that sets out how the retained trees are going to be protected through the construction phase and beyond. So if you've got a tree on your development site and you're retaining it, you'll need to make sure that the area around that tree is respected and protected. That's a new phrase I've just come up with there. Respected and protected through the development phase. And what I mean by that is basically there'll be fencing, tree protection fencing put up, which will keep the builders away from the crown of the tree and outside the root protection area of that tree. That will be drawn on your plan, and it will be referenced within an arboricultural method statement. So yes, you don't say, Scott, where you're up to in the planning process, but if you haven't already had an arboricultural method statement put together, then it may be that you get that put on as a planning condition. But part of that document is something called a tree protection plan, and within that tree protection plan, it will talk about what did I just say then? Respect and protect. Is that what I said? Respect and protect. It will show you how to respect and protect the trees. I'm going to make a note of that. That's brilliant, isn't it? Respect and protect. We're going to use that again. So that's that one. Have we got any other tree ones here? We've got one here from David in Lichfield. Let me just open that one up. David in Lichfield says, is it cheaper to just avoid trees and wildlife issues altogether, or is that wishful thinking? I mean, obviously it's cheaper not to have to do reports, but David, I'm not quite sure what you mean there, because the only way to avoid it really is to look at building on a car park or a brownfield site. Pretty much every site is going to have some form of tree and ecological support needed. You know, even in the middle of a town centre, it may be that you might need nesting bird surveys or something like that. So, yeah, that's quite high level. I'm not really sure I've answered you there. But yeah, I mean, it depends on the site really. So let's go back to the episode. So are tree officers secretly killing development? No, I don't think they are, and I think we've proven that. Ultimately, if you want approvals faster, you need to stop blaming the person with the least power in the process, don't you? You need to get better data, you need to get clearer plans, and that's where the real conversation starts. Because at the end of the day, the bottleneck isn't the tree officer; it's the broken planning system that they're trapped in. So that's it for this week, folks, and I will see you on the next one.